PSG have won the Super Cup against Tottenham Hotspur. But listen, that game had everything. And Tottenham can take a lot from that. Thomas Frank, let's start off. Let's have it right. He deserves big, big credit to get his team sorted how he did. Every man putting in mileage to a T. And I'm not going to lie, I had PSG on fraud watch. I had them on fraud watch. The way they got dealt with Chelsea, it looked like they were going to get dealt with 2-0 up, 2-0 down to a new look Spurs side. I was like, nah, if you lot let this happen, was it just a one season wonder from PSG? But they came back in spectacular fashion to get the draw, and then Spurs did return back to being Spursy to make sure they didn't win two cups within the space of a few months. I couldn't have had that. But let's be real, man for man, for 75, 80 minutes, Spurs had it spot on. Thomas Frank went with a 3-5-2, and again, it just nullified everything that PSG were doing. Kvaratskhelia, stinker, unhooked, nothing. Didn't get any joy. Doué, nothing. Dembele for large parts of the game, nothing. Bradley Barcola, nothing. And you know what? Let's start off by giving Spurs their props, because I'll get to laughing at them in a second doing the Spursy thing, because they still didn't win. But you have to talk about what this means for the rest of the season and what you can take from this Tottenham team. Now, Spurs fans, I want you to let me know, have Spurs been playing with that back five throughout pre-season with Thomas Frank? I didn't think they was. I didn't think they had. I think that was something that he's deployed for this game. But a back three, or the three centre halves with Romero in the middle, Mickey van der Ven to the left, and Kevin Danso to the right, look really solid. Super solid. You got that protection for Romero so he can go sweep up. He's lightning quick to the left of him. You've got Van der Ven in there. And to the right of him, you've got Danso, who's also quick. And then the wing backs in Jed Spence and Porro. Jed Spence, he was absolutely locking down that side. He was unreal. Barcola couldn't get. He was on Jed Spence's side. He was playing left wing back. Who was right wing for them? I think it was Barcola, wasn't it? Who was on that side, because it wasn't Kvaratskhelia. He was in midfield. So because Doué, it was Doué actually. Doué was on the right. Sorry, Doué was on the right, and he couldn't do nothing. Jed Spence absolutely locked it down. Rodrigo Bentancur, he was possessed. The man didn't stop running. I look at the likes of what's his name, Pap Sarr. He was outrageous as well. I've never seen him play that good in my life. Do you know what I'm saying? And Richarlison, he was holding up the ball. He was being physical. He wouldn't stop running. He had shots on target. PSG could not lay a glove on Spurs. And actually, you thought that Spurs, with that 3-5-2, might have got a little bit penned in, which they did towards the last 10 minutes of the game, which led to the turnaround, which I'll talk about in a minute. But for the 75, 80 minutes, or was it actually, it was the 85th minute that goal was scored, I think it was. So for 85 minutes, they completely dominated PSG, and it looked like another masterclass. And to a certain extent, it was a Thomas Frank masterclass. They just ran out of steam, and to be fair, PSG turned the screw with bringing on a striker in Gonzalo Ramos and putting Mbappe is his name, I think. Another youngster, another French under-21 international, and then putting Dembele out to the wing as well. But I have to say, the way that Thomas Frank had them drilled, having coming in the summer against a PSG side that, yes, okay, it's their first game back. It's essentially this is their pre-season after getting to the final of the Club World Cup as well. So they were rusty. I get that. But Tottenham were very organised. If I was a Tottenham fan, there's enough there to see that Thomas Frank doesn't look out of place. And that's what I liked about the performance. Yes, they've come up short. They've done the Spursy thing and they've ended up losing. But the way that Thomas Frank had them set up, the way he got them all to buy into it, to a man, Kudus was solid and strong, powerful, did everything but score, which some people label that at Kudus because he needs to find a little bit more end product on a more consistent basis. But the way he carried the ball, the way he took the ball, how he worked hard, he was excellent as well. And I think every man to a T was just fantastic. Paulinho just sat in there and does what he does best. He's a little bit of a destroyer in there. But for Thomas Frank, and I'm pleased for Thomas Frank because I like him as a manager, and everyone's been waiting for him to make this step up, and maybe he will learn. He will learn from what happened today. The Spurs players we'll learn from what happened tonight. But even though they lost it in a Spursy manner and got to penalties, and actually they were leading the penalty shootout, and then they started missing. I think it was Van der Ven who got the first miss. Then Tell completely missed the target as well. Even with that being said, there's enough in that Tottenham Hotspur performance to basically know that they look like they're in good hands. I'm not sure if they're going to play that in the Premier League. If they do, look, against lesser opponents, teams that aren't as good as PSG, they're going to get a lot of joy. They got a lot of joy tonight. The only thing was that, okay, it was Romero and Van der Ven that got the goals. It wasn't attackers. And it is a little bit negative, but there's, I look at my team, Man United, trying to implement, five at the back, and that is how you implement it. Like, you go after teams. Just because you got five defenders on the pitch, it doesn't mean that, you don't go after players. And when you have those wing backs, they have to get forward. They have to press the opposition and stop them playing. You can't just sit back like a sitting duck, which is what Spurs did in the last 10 minutes of the game. Because, to be fair, PSG upped the ante, and Spurs weren't good enough to see that out as a flat back five and just say, right, let's just defend really well and not concede anything silly. To be fair, the shot from Lee, the first goal that they pulled back PSG was a great shot. It's right in the corner, to be fair. And then I think a few tired legs, tired minds, plus extra quality from PSG. Hakimi with the cross, Ramos with the header, and he gets it. He makes sure that they get to penalties. But I have to say, man, I would be pleased if I was a Tottenham fan. I'll be pleased with what I saw. Thomas Frank, the substitutions as well that he made, bringing in Bergvall and bringing in Archie Gray, bringing on Dominic Solanke. You could argue that they didn't work because when he made them changes, the team went to shit and they couldn't hold on to it. But it was still the right thing to do. Players tiring. He wanted a little bit of injection. And actually, when you're 2-0 up with 10 minutes to go, you do want to be seeing the game out. You don't need to be on the front foot. You need to just defend better, how they've been doing it for the last 80, 85 minutes. But they just couldn't hold on. But I like what Thomas Frank did. For PSG, listen, I tweeted, Fraud Watch is activated. Fraud Watch is activated, but they survived that, to be fair. You have to take into account it was their first game back. But there were some frailties. I think what you can see with the PSG team is that if you bypass their press and go long and then put pressure on them, they don't like it. But the teams who play against them, i.e. Liverpool, Villa, City did it in the league phase, Arsenal, these are teams that kind of want to play, And actually Villa nearly came back against them, to be fair, and nearly showed that frailties by playing with a little bit of intensity. So for real, man, I think there's some frailties there, and you got to remember that this PSG team is also young. They're in transition as well. They've just reached the top of European football very, very quickly in that turnaround with Luis Enrique. But they're a young team. They've got a lot of young players who are not used to doing this thing consistently. So they're going to have teething problems, to be fair. But when it's all said and done, you couldn't write them off. First game back of pre-season, really. Super Cup, 2-0 down, staring down the barrel of defeat against a stubborn Spurs side. And they managed to come back and win or find a way. So you got to give respect to PSG when I was basically putting them on Fraud Watch. But in terms of the Premier League is concerned, going forward for Spurs, I think there's enough there to be excited about. There's enough there to take as positives going into it. So yeah, man of the match, you'd probably give it to a Spurs player, to be honest, because it was 2-2 in 90 minutes. But there was a whole host of them, even though they conceded 2 late goals. I wouldn't give a man of the match to any of the PSG players. I'd probably give it, I think Sarr was excellent. It's difficult. I think Sarr was excellent. I think that Bentancur was excellent. Spence was out of this world. Richarlison was brilliant. Romero was excellent. Porro was really good at 1v1s. I'll give it to Sarr. I think he had an excellent performance, but it could have been anyone. I really like what Spence was doing, actually, to be fair. But yeah, smash the like on the video, subscribe to the channel if you are new. Another team in the Premier League that you can look at and say, you know what, they've got better. They look like they're in good hands. A long way to go. Obviously, we ain't started the Premier League season, but I look at Spurs. Complete contrast to under Ange with Thomas Frank. He's got them organised. He's got them singing on the same hymn sheet as well. No Basuma, dashed him out because he's being late all the time. And the players that were there worked hard. They worked very hard in a short space of time. So that shows me that Thomas Frank's got them playing for him already. So big kudos to him. And shout out Mohamed Kudus as well. Actually, he played all right. Take care. I'm out of it. Peace.